Welcome to Sound and Fury. My name is Eric Wilfred Watson, and I know how to read.
And I'm Hugh Frank.
I never learned to read!
And today we're going to talk about The First Confessor by Terry Goodkind, which is a book I finally got around to reading after it having sat on my bookshelf for many years. I bought this book because I'm a fan of this book. This is the first book in Terry Goodkind's sort of truth series, Wizard's First Rule. It's one of the first fantasy novels I ever read. The series starts off pretty good, in my opinion, but then it kind of goes off the rails a little bit. Biggest criticism, and most fans that criticize these books tend to say the same thing, is that they start good, but then they turn into like BDSM porn, and he rants about sex and his libertarian politics.
Wow.
And occasionally there's a sword fight.
Okay.
But the first book is really good. It follows all the fantasy tropes, but because it was a fantasy book, one of the first ones I read.
Should it be like Wizard's 50 Shades?
Dr. Rosenblatt, foreplay in room 7, please. Dr. Rosenblatt.
I read this book before I was really into fantasy, so the fact that it's like nobody character living a small, unimportant life, important character takes them on a quest, magical things happen, they go on an adventure, it's up to only this person can save the entire universe from said bad guy.
You thought that was kind of a new thing? That
his name is Dark and Rhal. That's the name of the villain. But no, I mean, it follows all the fantasy tropes, but it does them well, and I liked the book.
Okay.
Then,
And
several years ago, I don't remember where I was going, but I was at an airport, and I saw this on an airport bookshelf
all right.
at an airport bookstore, which is, I guess, where you would have a bookshelf in an airport.
Typically.
So I bought it. It's a prequel. It's supposed to take hundreds of years before the other books.
Okay.
It sets up the universe, and completely forgot it existed until I was going through my books. I'm like, hey, I still have this thing. I probably ought to read it. So
There you go.
I finally did. And I probably should have saved the $9.99 that I paid for it at the bookstore. Didn't like it so much.
As the Germans would say, should you have bought it? 999. Just saying. Scheiße.
So you're more of a fantasy literature fan than I am. You've probably read more fantasy books, but you've never read Terry Goodkind.
I have not.
Okay.
I've always meant to. Just never got around to it.
The First Confessor, I'm not going to get into spoilers. I'm not going to really get into the story details because they're not really important to this conversation. I wanted to make this video because I was annoyed at this book. I don't know how I finished it. I was just annoyed reading it the whole time. I kept reading it because I was like, I hate reading it. I was like, come on, get on with it.
So it's like Chuck Norris. He doesn't read. He just stares the book down until it gives him the information he wants.
There's about this much story in the book.
Oh.
There's about this much
BDSM porn.
Yeah. There's about this much repeating what was happened in this part of the book.
Wait, there's about this much what?
The best way I can explain why I don't like this book is primarily dialogue. Now, dialogue is hard to write. When you have a conversation, people don't always just say what they say and then the next person responds. And most conversations have interrupting. Most conversations have partial thoughts. The other person fills in the gaps or whatnot. These books have monologues followed by the response monologue, followed by another response monologue that summarizes the other two monologues and then adds a few pieces of information. Then the next character repeats everything just to make sure he understands, then adds 2 lines. It gets so tedious really quickly. And then once he finally understands, that character has to go and explain it all to another character. And he writes it by giving the same fucking monologue he just did. Then the other person doesn't believe him. Then he has to use logic to persuade him of the conversation he already read about. It's like, I already know this shit. Get on with it.
Get on with it.
And then that person will go and explain the same shit to another person. It's like, oh my God, it's like 200 pages of just one idea. And it doesn't stop for almost 1,000 pages. It's the most tedious thing I've ever read. Which you can purchase now on Amazon. Not a sponsor. So I want to illustrate one thing about the book that I don't like. And I want you to help me with this, okay?
Oh, sure.
Pretend that you are a character in a fantasy novel. Put your mind in that setting. I'm going to send you on a quest. Now, to do this quest, you must listen carefully to everything I have to say to fully understand what is about to occur, and you cannot make any mistakes.
So I must listen to everything you're going to say and not make any mistakes.
Yes, and make sure you repeat it back to me when we're done so that I know you understand everything.
So that you know I understand everything, I'm going to repeat back everything that... Something.
In a different room in this building, which is called a house, you will find a rectangular object made of metal. Within this object will be a refrigerated area, which keeps things cold.
All right, so within the house is a refrigerated metal area.
Within that, you will find many mysterious objects of different sizes, shapes, and values.
Frank, it's so sweet of you to be concerned about me. What's really wrong with this?
What I seek from you is an object about this size that contains a yellow carbonated liquid. I desire this liquid, so I am asking you to go on this quest with many perils. And don't go too high up into the frozen compartment. That's not the correct area. Make sure that you retrieve this carbonated beverage that some call beer and bring it back to me so that I might drink it. But beware, there is also a pantry which does not contain beer. But what you really need to do is you need to go tell somebody else to do this. Now that I've told you, you have to explain the quest to many people along the way exactly what you're doing. 4,000 fucking pages.
Doing again?
When you could have said, "Hey, would you mind going and getting me a beer?"
No.
That's the book. The story is actually about an interesting premise. They have mind walkers. It's like a psychic attack. You can go into your brain, hear your thoughts, and if they don't like what you're doing, they can kill you.
About beer now.
But the only way to prevent the bad thing from happening is to swear loyalty to the prequel character who's an ancestor of the other character, and it has to set up it suffers from prequelitis terribly. They have to do all of the things that are going to set up all of the other things that you're going to read in the other book.
Gotcha.
And it just it's so long
everything to be exactly this way when the book ends, so that they can start off the next.
It really could have been a short story. It's about how the confessors come into existence. The confessors are women that have the magical power to make men instantaneously tell them the truth because they make them madly in love with them. And that's when the BDSM porn comes in. Like, yes, mistress, I'll do whatever you say. And it's just really awkward and horrible to read.
Wow.
But first book's really good. The first book of the series is a genuinely fun read. I mean, it's also 1,000 freaking pages long, but it's not as tedious. And granted, like, this much of it is porn, but still, it's a good book.
That's a pretty good porn ratio.
Anyway, that's really all. I just wanted to bitch about a book I read. So next time, I'll try to talk about a book that I liked.
Yeah, good luck with that.
No, I'm always reading. I'm usually reading 2 books at once. I'm usually reading a book on paper, and I'm also reading a book on my tablet, and I'm usually also listening to an audiobook. So
3 books at once.
I'm really going, most of the time I'm in the middle of 3 books at any given moment, and I do want to come back here and talk about more of them. I think it would be fun to do that.
Cool.
So I promise you that I will like some of the books I'm going to talk about, but I am planning on talking about more books on this channel. So if you're a book reader, please hit the subscribe button. If you have any suggestions of books that you think I might like better than the First Confessor, put them in the comments. Or if you think 50 Shades of Grey. Or if you think the First Confessor is a really good book, I'd like to hear your thoughts too. So thanks for watching.
Frank? Oh.
Jane, just one more question.